After coping with so many challenges as entrepreneur, nothing can bring you out of order.
Exactly. How do we allocate our limited resources best to get our first customer feedback and attention for the new product?
It's better to have 1,000 people see your ads 10 times than 10,000 people one time. The important lesson is in marketing, first of all, not to spread yourself thin. Today's episode is very special. Today we will have a new format. We will do a marketing consultation with a founder, Fabian. And let's see what happens. Hi, Fabian. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for the introduction, Wilhelm, and thank you so much for having me. I'm doing actually quite fine. Just arrived to a new destination yesterday and my baggage got lost. So that was a little bit stressful, and I hope that I don't have to sit here blank naked or with the oldest t-shirt today. But fortunately, it did arrive yesterday night. I'm actually quite fine and absolutely thrilled for what is about to happen in the next hour.
Nice. Yeah, that's entrepreneurial spirit. Whatever happens, you can cope with that. After coping with so many challenges as entrepreneur, nothing can bring you out of order.
Exactly.
Could you please tell me about your project?
Sure, happy to do so. So maybe first of all, for the audience, my name is Fabian. Thanks for having me. Regarding our project, so that's, I guess, the typical elevator pitch. We are creating the startup inuu, and with inuu, we will create the Airbnb for luxury goods. So pretty much the first peer-to-peer sharing platform for luxury goods to make them profitable for their owners, inclusive for anyone, and more sustainable for society. So that's pretty much in a nutshell, and happy to give some more introduction to our challenges and why we think the market asks for that solution.
How did you come up with this idea?
So indeed, it was the outcome of a classical brainstorming. Maybe that differentiates me a little bit from other founders that come directly out of the space. I was sitting with some friends like 2.5 years back. We always had that entrepreneurial mindset. We always wanted to build something and had several ideas prior, but we just never started. I guess that's the case for many people out there who have an idea but never get the trigger to actually execute. And so that day we thought, hey, it cannot be that we all have our, let's say, good jobs and we were not unhappy in our jobs, but we wanted to create, we wanted to build, we just never did. We were like sitting in that golden cage where it's fine, but it's not it. It's not what we actually want to strive for. And this is when we said, hey, we will do that now. Then we entered a typical brainstorming process where we came from several directions saying, what do we think? What does the market need? And also, what skill set do we have? And to be honest, that was the time when money again had a price. So not every idea also was not just because it was a nice idea that maybe contributes to society, but there was a business case necessary. And this is why we ended up focusing on segments such as the luxury segment, where you can build a solid business case as well.
Yeah, so by starting this business, you are already so far ahead to majority of people. How is it going? How has the development been since then?
Happy to answer that. So to be honest, I never thought I would say that, but I do say it now. It's just as most entrepreneurs describe it. So many people say it's a roller coaster ride. It's ups and downs, and it absolutely is. There's days, I guess I can speak for most founders, but for me personally as well, there's days where you absolutely believe that your idea is the next big thing. Fortunately, it's the majority of days where I'm positive in that sense. But there's also days where you are sitting there and it's like, is it really it? Like, is it worth it? And of course, you also look to your peers, especially if you have been in corporate or in another firm before, and you see like, hey, they're walking up the stairs, they're gaining their promotions, they have their new titles. Of course, what's also valued in society, we shouldn't underestimate that factor of social pressure and validation that we all need. And you're like, hey, I could also be there right now, but I chose a different route and now I'm sitting here. So these thoughts, they also come to my mind. And there's, as I said, days where I'm also like, hey, is it really worth it? Is this going to work? Overall, I think I can say that the journey so far has been absolutely worth it, just because of the learning experience and because you discover yourself from a different perspective. You are put into another place. And even though I potentially would maybe one day go back into a corporate firm, into another startup whatsoever, I already learned tons. So this, as for me personally, and for the project, I can say that we thought it would all be faster. Definitely.
Yes.
So there had been, I wouldn't even say setbacks, but delays in several steps of the process, and many times not even to our fault. I personally like to deliver on my word. And if I say, hey, we are going live 1 year from now, I want to keep that promise. But sometimes, especially when you are a young startup and you have to deal with external partners, it's not that easy because you are at the bottom of their priority list and still you are dependent on them. So this was, I think, my first major learning. You have to earn the attention of every partner and later, of course, of your customers. And this really was a test of all our patience.
Yes, I can imagine that. Actually, my last post on LinkedIn is based on that. I was talking with another entrepreneur and he's ready to invest all in the first product batch. And I'm thinking for this business idea to work, it has to start be profitable immediately.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then it will be really difficult if you have spent all your resources in the first few months. And if you haven't started many startups yet, it's so difficult to estimate how long it will take. And usually you are more optimistical. And,
Yes.
and that's actually good because many experienced entrepreneurs say if they knew how tough it will be, they wouldn't have started it in the first place.
Yeah. I've heard that one as well. So for now, luckily, I'm not at that point yet, but I see where they're coming from. I guess, especially later where things really get complicated and also when the burden goes higher, right? If you have employees that you care for
Yes.
and you have expectations even more than just your own expectations to fulfill, then maybe the market is quite difficult at that time. I really get where these no sleep nights come from. Yes.
So you have launched already, yes?
We have not, but we are so close to that point. So this is just another example to what I said in the beginning or just some moments prior when I said, hey, things take longer than expected.
Yeah.
So our product, our first beta version was 98% ready a few months ago. And then we entered the jungle of bureaucracy once more. So for example, indeed, our developer is quite experienced when it comes to cybersecurity and many laws that we have to follow in the European market. But to be honest, we were just stunned again when we entered the iOS landscape and how many things we have to actually deal with. So we had sessions where we talked for quite some time about what to fill into that statement. Apple, in this case, like we want to launch our first version on Apple devices, what they all asked from us. So in terms of laws we fulfill, what target segment we have. I mean, that's the major point of a startup, right? We have assumptions, but for many of the questions we were asked, we don't even have an answer yet. And this took us longer than expected. To come back to the question, we have handed in our MVP, or maybe it's even a little bit more, our beta version of the platform to Apple for launching it. And we hope that pretty much any day now, we can get the green light from Apple and then we will launch it.
So would you say the government is putting too strict regulations, or is it Apple, some big corporations, or do you think it's a fair process?
I think that depends on how they would push all the requirements they ask us to, like how strict they would be in terms of actually demanding anything we provide there. Because it's fair to ask these questions, But of course, keeping in mind that it's assumptions. So for example, we had to say whether we would allow gambling on our platform. And of course, gambling, like, it's not our intent. We are not a gambling platform. But if there is a customer that wants to promote his luxury casino, for example, that's just the edge where we had to also interpret by the definition of Apple. Now, is that promoting gambling or is it not? And we have to make these statements months before maybe a scenario like that even happens. And if Apple or maybe another institution would be understanding and saying like, hey, you couldn't have known it, you have limited resources in terms of doing the research, protect yourself with attorneys and so on, then it would be okay. If it would be pushed hard, indeed, I think this would be beneficiary to the bigger corporates, as they say that if there's too much bureaucracy, it actually pushes out of the market any new players, or it raises the market entry barriers. It's actually harmful for innovation and smaller companies. It even pushes the bigger players to become even stronger.
Yeah, I agree. There are especially certain industries that are so overregulated. Sometimes it's a good thing, like for gambling, but sometimes it's like too much and it keeps the innovation away. There is probably a reason why many big successful companies are coming not from Europe, who are changing the landscape in AI and internet and stuff. Would you consider saying, okay, if Apple want us to avoid gambling, you could say it on your terms and condition. If someone wants to use your platform, you don't accept certain industries for the beginning.
Yes, we did that, and we made that clear in our terms and conditions. So indeed, we have, I would say, legal right to then remove certain users or certain objects or services from the platform. This is possible, but I don't know how it's handled in practice. If there's too many users and you have limited resources as a startup, you cannot oversee any certain object or item on the platform, and you just don't see it. And it happens several times. It's reported potentially to Apple. It can quite possibly be that, first of all, you are banned from the App Store or you are punished in other ways. And if there's a lawsuit coming, it's indeed a problematic situation for any startup. I guess there's many startups out there who in the first phase, even market entry phase, they were faced with a lawsuit and this broke the company. So yes, it's a major risk.
The business concept is not very easy from my experience. I've seen so many startups, this kind of Airbnb concept where you have user-generated content, you have users who are selling something and then you have buyers who are buying something. So you have to moderate, especially in this industry with luxury goods. Probably you will also have to avoid any copycats from real brands. So there will be a lot of moderating, a lot of control necessary, I guess. No?
Yes, of course, it comes in handy that AI made such huge progresses in the last months and 2 years. So we will definitely use that, and hopefully that cuts out maybe 80% of the quite obvious scams. But of course, scammers also advance, right? We all know that these emails some years ago said like, hey, an African prince wants you to be the heir of the throne and you want this and that. And nowadays it's like an Amazon package is awaiting you. You just have to confirm it by clicking this link. So they also advance. And of course, we will deal with that. It's indeed one of the major challenges for us in the beginning to overcome the time where it's still like the Wild West. Our platform cannot provide so much security. Much responsibility lies on the shoulders of the owners of the goods as well. Hopefully not to attract too much scam. Some scam would always happen, or at least think people would try to make it happen, until we are at the point where we can put major resources into protection. So there's indeed a time period where we have to be extra cautious. And that's just another major business risks that we have to face and that we have to overcome.
Yes. I think also with this kind of business, the other big challenge is to get the critical mass of users on both sides, buyers and sellers. That's why you probably With other businesses, you oftentimes can just launch a minimum viable product and see what happens. You have one client and then you gather some experience, improve your service. You have another client and then it goes slowly. But in your case, you need to start with all your power to get this buzz going and to have something going on the platform. If there are too few of one of those target audience, then it's like boring for the other one.
Absolutely. The stealth mode idea of a startup is just not suitable for us. Without stealth mode or in stealth mode, there would be no customers. If we build the product so that the first customers already have a good user experience, we would have the problem many startups face, that they walk into a wrong direction and they don't even know it. So we actually need that immediate user feedback as well to find our product market fit as fast as we can, and then allocate resources, for example, for marketing to just solve the problem you just mentioned. So we have several problems at once, and this is also why it hasn't been done. So for our knowledge, and we did do the research, of course, there is no platform like that. We didn't even find the platform worldwide, especially in the European market. And if there is one, we just don't know it. It's still quite early in the time frame and we still have a shot. But so there's quite a few platforms out there or renting systems that have tried more or less the same thing, but not in the luxury segment. And we think that it's not even a niche, it's still a broad segment. We hope that in that case, we have slightly better chances of overcoming these initial and later challenges.
If you are unique and it pops out, so people see different types of offers and suddenly they see something they have never seen and ideally they have been wanting something like that, then there is this initial push that you can use for your advantage. Are you targeting whole Europe or just Germany in the beginning?
For the beginning, we are targeting Germany. Indeed, it is a very easy step for us to then target the German-speaking market, so also Austria and Switzerland. Technically, our application is already able to do that. We just have to make the switch. This is where our conversation today comes in. We have limited resources, and to solve the problem you mentioned, to get an initial offer so that the initial customers even have something to see and something to do on the platform, we have to allocate our marketing resources very carefully. As for now, we are still bootstrapped. It's our own money that we put into marketing. You can spend endless money on ads and marketing, which we also need to a certain extent. This is one of the major challenges that we face. I'm very, very happy to be here today because we have our strong sides in the team. We are quite diverse in terms of our skill set, but we are absolutely lacking for now. And what would definitely be our first hire is a marketing expert. Therefore, how do we allocate our limited resources best to get our first customer feedback and attention for the new product, even though the product still is, of course, a beta version, like it's not perfect? And this is our question for today for the next minutes.
Yes, it's a difficult question because you also have two different types of target audience. So we have to figure out which of those are the biggest priority for you. So let's start from, there is eBay, for example. What is the difference with your platform? Which advantages are you giving compared to eBay, for example?
So I would say the first major difference is eBay is primarily for selling and buying things. So it's for changing of ownership and it's not for rental. This is, of course, in the business model, a major difference. This was maybe a little secret out of the box from our side. This was also one of our earliest MVPs. So we put some items on eBay and we tried to actually rent them. So we wanted to know, is there even interest over the platform of eBay? If we put in the items that we later on want to have on our platform, are there people reaching out? What is the tone of these people? Are they also our targeted customers? Would we rent our items to these people or would we not, and why? So these were the questions we ourselves put us into. And regarding eBay as well, eBay is not luxury. To be honest, there's pages, web pages and memes about the conversations on eBay,
Yes.
about how people just cannot put together a simple sentence in more or less right grammar and in a nice tone, like in a friendly tone, like how you would start a business conversation. You want to negotiate with the person, and you just don't start with what's the last price without even saying hello. And this is the tone that happens on eBay. We cannot fully say it will never happen on our platform as well, but we don't want it to happen. Luxury comes with a certain idea of what the service is like. I think it sounds a little bit weird that for now our service is still absolutely not luxury, but it's not because we don't want it to be or we don't know how it should be. We are not there yet. But once we have reached a certain maturity in our product and our firm, there should be no comparison at all to eBay because the whole user experience is entirely different.
That's good. Could you give a few examples of products you plan to offer in the beginning?
So this is, of course, a question as well that we ask ourselves, should we offer everything or should we just go for a certain stereotype product like watches or handbags? And our answer to that was that we offer some categories where the users can put their objects in. Therefore, we go somewhat with the stereotype of what we expect people to both offer and demand. For example, it's cars, watches, handbags, clothes, things like that. Also locations. So this is maybe something that you don't think of in the first second. We also want to have some locations on our platform. For example, it could be a wedding location. It could be for a photo shoot or something like that. We have the category other. So that's a simple, pragmatic way to offer other objects that we ourselves maybe not even think of to our platform. Because to be honest, luxury is a very personal thing. So things that are luxury for me don't have to be the same for you. And it can be that, for example, a luxury mountain bike, like sports equipment, is luxury for me. I like to spend my money on it. I really appreciate it. And I would spend 5,000 euros on a mountain bike or even more. And you would say, hell no, I'm happy with my city bike for 100 euros from eBay, right? So we have put some categories that follow the general idea of luxury into the application, but there's room also another category to put whatever luxury is for you. And then with the months going by, we will see whether the market or the demand and offer meet in a category where we didn't even expect it to be.
Yeah, you are starting pretty broad. In some months, you will have the insights, what works better, where is it easier to find the people who are offering that, and where it's easy to find people who are buying that. And it might be different things. It might be much easier to find certain type of products to offer, but they are more difficult to buy. So
Yes.
you might have a mismatch. Do you have already some partnerships in sight with someone who wants to buy products on your page?
So maybe that's also a little bit out of the box, but I can tell you that. So we also, of course, figured how can we solve that initial problem? And our first idea was to approach commercial shops, enterprises who already rent things. So for them, it's just another sales funnel. And we approached them, hey, you already rent your luxury cars in the region of Berlin, but you only do that via your website and people come to your website via their Google search. Would you not maybe be interested on putting maybe just some of your cars also on our platform? Our advantage is we have an initial offer because the step for the companies that already rent is pretty small. It's just a little bit of time to put them on our platform. And their advantage is to indeed have another sales funnel, maybe get extra customers at no cost. Because for now, we don't charge them to upload their items. This is how we want to tackle that. So we have a list and we are approaching private persons that we know that have some objects on hand they could potentially offer, and shops that are already renting, so that we overcome that initial problem of having no offer at all.
That's a good first step. In my opinion, it's a bit tricky to spread yourself thin in terms of categories. If I was doing it, I would maybe try to do a market research and try to find what is the biggest demand. So I think, in my opinion, the buyers, that's your biggest priority. You can find the sellers, that's not a problem. But the question is, what do buyers want to buy? Because if you offer too many different things, especially if those things should be local, then people will not find the right thing in their category. So imagine if you have 1,000 products and you spread it over all the cities. For example, rental company has to be in the nearby, and person is searching for the car nearby and doesn't find it, so he is disappointed. It's a good approach to have a really lucrative niche and to cover it pretty nicely, pretty deeply.
I have a question about that to you as the marketing expert. Mm-hmm. Should we target one specific promising segment, as you said, one category of objects with our resources, but not cancel out the other objects? Or should we go one step further and say, let's say it's handbags, right? And say, hey, for now our platform is just open for handbags, and with the time being, there will be other categories. What do you say?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My first thought is you can do the first option. You can focus on a certain product category, but keep the other. The difference between those approaches is just your position in the mind of people. If you are the place to go for handbags, then it's a little bit easier to brand yourself as the place to go. So you focus all your efforts on that. For people, it's clear, okay, I am the target audience, I'm not the target audience. Of course, it's also a bit risky because you never know 100% whether the handbags is the best niche. And if you go with the option one, where you focus your resources on the niche, but also are open for the others, maybe you will be surprised. Maybe people will start buying certain things and you didn't think about it. Maybe it's like collectibles, and then 1 year later you completely rebrand yourself and be the place for collectibles.
Yes, absolutely. So this is also our priority or our choice for now, that just as the question with, are we open just to a local market or Germany-wide or even European markets, we want to be as open as we can, but focus our resources on a certain region and a certain object category or some categories. We have a limited budget that comes out of our own pockets for now. And we, of course, want to allocate it as efficiently and as effective as we can. This is one of our major questions. Maybe we can just go through a little case study with that. We have amount X to use for our go live campaign. You can choose the amount and then divide it or multiply it by the actual amount that we have. How would you allocate that budget for marketing purposes?
Yeah, usually you will be surprised how expensive it's actually to get one client. That's the bad news. So this kind of businesses where you have this network effect, where you have sellers and buyers. But oftentimes I think, in my opinion, they start with investors. So they can spend $100 or 100 euros, 200 euros per client so that they can really invest 50,000 euros a month maybe into marketing so that they have something going on. In this case, we have to be very specific, and we have the biggest chances to take the chance. Oftentimes it feels scary to pick one single niche and just focus on that. But the good thing is, as a startup with a platform, you just need to take really leap of faith. But the good thing is, if you succeed, then just the network effect is so much worth for investors and for strategical position. So if you pick the right niche, it can scale you to the stratosphere.
Yes.
Yeah, we can think about, for example, maybe $5,000 or $10,000 per month as a marketing budget. That's also another thing. a small marketing budget can mean different things for
yes.
different
And especially
entrepreneurs.
if you differentiate between the European market and the US market.
So $5,000 or even $10,000 sounds like a lot of money, but for this industry, it's not that much. So maybe we start with 10,000 because it's easier to calculate.
Yes.
We have to think a little bit about potential niche we might target, and so that I can understand the target audience. In general, during this call, I have been thinking about influencer marketing. That could work pretty well because it's all about trust. Trust is like the basis, and it doesn't matter which product you are selling. You always need a certain amount of trust for people to spend the time and add their credit card information. And with influencer marketing, that's where you get the trust, because there is someone is recommending you. The thing is, with influencer marketing, you need to do it with the same influencer for some period of time, so that the same people, like those followers from this influencer, get the recommendation of your product several times.
Yes.
That's an important lesson to learn. You need to contact your target audience maybe 10 times, maybe 15 times. That's how they build trust. So if you have a budget and you could spend for 10,000 visitors or views, so it's better to have 1,000 people see your ads, or like in this case, recommendation from influencer 10 times, than 10,000 people one time, if you understand what I mean, you know?
Yes. Reminds me of Bruce Lee. Sorry.
Oh yes, we have a quote in one of our 12th episode about Bruce Lee.
Yes.
To do it, I'm not scared of someone who can do many different
1,000
tactics.
kicks, but of the person who practiced the same kick 1,000 times.
Yes. So you need to establish a connection with your target audience. It becomes easier if you get their attention with something exciting. Because if it's just something they don't need, maybe they say, okay, I rather go to eBay because I know eBay. Then it's, of course, uphill battle. But if you have some product they've been dreaming about getting a Rolex, and suddenly you come across and say, yeah, 50% discount, we are ISO approved and we are secure, and here is the concept, you don't need, you can go to a party and look great or something like that. And then, of course, you can maybe even a couple of times, if you show the ads, you can skip a few, it's much cheaper to acquire such clients. And that's where it is so important to understand the target audience. Because at the moment, you probably have some niches on your mind. We can speak about that. But if you had all those different niches, it's so difficult to understand who is actually the ideal target audience, the buyer, because someone who rents a car is a total different target persona than someone who wants luxurious clothes or Rolex.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have some niche on your mind that you would prefer?
So I think the categories that we described prior that we want to start with are rather those categories that we think of for now. Some of them are favored over others because they are just easier to lend and to borrow. Let's talk about a car. A car is a pretty complex thing to rent legally because there's so many things you have to consider. Let's just say you have a nice car, I want to rent it. You put it on the platform. You have to consider so many things with the insurance. You have to check that I'm even allowed to drive a car, that I'm not under influence. So the list goes on. There's many things to consider, and it's just easier if you want to rent your watch. This is
car is really a tough market, I think.
Yes.
There is so much competition.
Yeah, so this is also not our priority for now. We think there is room for luxury cars, but we don't go too deep into that. So we also do not expect that private. So that's also a major challenge of our platform for now. It's both like B2B and B2C because we want to open our platform both to commercial shops, firms that already rent objects, and to private persons as well, just as Airbnb does. So this is the image we have in mind where we want to go to, our vision. But for now, we will only target with our limited resources, which is not just money, it's also time. We are just like our 3 co-founders for now. We don't have any other employees. Everything is on our shoulders. We will not go for the extremely complex categories too hard in terms of selling, in terms of ads or whatsoever. Yes.
That's good. So let's say watches. I'm not the target audience, so for me it's difficult to understand why I would rent a watch. Could you tell me a little bit about that, like the motivation of potential target audience to rent us? It's probably like a second-hand watch, luxurious watch.
The first thing is that it even exists is already proven. This is a major advantage for us. The proof of concept has already been done, not by a single platform, but by various providers that specify their offer in a niche. There's shops that rent cars, there's shops that rent watches, there's shops that rent clothes or a wedding dress or whatsoever. So that the demand and the offer can meet and that profitable businesses can succeed from that has been done already. This is a major advantage for us. We just try to combine it all into one place and give luxury renting a home. For now, people just Google. They don't go into like just on Pinterest where they want to get the inspiration and then eventually click on something. This is what we want to become. But regarding the motive, it can be for a special occasion, for a wedding, and maybe also for the usage itself. I said that a luxury item is not always just to show off. Sometimes it's also luxury to use it as a mountain bike, your equipment to go skiing, or riding a motorbike, where it's the joy itself that you want to experience. It's considered luxury. So of course, the very obvious thing is to put yourself in a position where you have a more individual style. It's just observational, it's just beauty and fashion, but there's also the usage character to things. For us personally, I think that luxury and this is also a challenge that we want to tackle, it's just not efficient for me to buy, let's say, for example, a watch. In my day-to-day life, I don't wear a watch, or if I do, I have like a fitness tracker or something like that, like smartwatches. They get more and more popular, even among people who used to always wear the Rolex and they can afford it. Still, nowadays, there's many successful people who still prefer their Apple Watch or their smartwatch in general. And so for them, maybe it's also that, hey, I have the occasion where I want to wear my Rolex once or twice a year. I could afford it even myself, but like what for? So it's just more practical to actually rent it for the occasion that you want and to get the specific model that you want for that occasion. And of course, let's not talk about the ultra rich individuals, but people have a Rolex, maybe 2, but they don't have 10 for every color of the suit.
Yeah, if you go to a ball, a special high like theater or special event where you want to present yourself pretty well.
Exactly.
And it doesn't happen so often for majority of people. Yes.
Also, what I think in that regard is that we always have that ostrich bias. So we just see the world and society from our perspective.
Yes.
And as I said, luxury is very personal. So it can be that in another social circle, people act entirely different.
Yes.
And there it's completely normal. Let's just look at Generation Z, where the desire for luxury items is so high. In my generation, it was not like that. We didn't give much whether somebody wore like a designer shirt from Balenciaga or Gucci or whatsoever. We just went to H&M, right? So, or to other clothing shops that had basic jerseys, and it was fine. It was enough for us. And now Generation Z, maybe there's, if I walk through the bigger cities of Europe, in almost any single one of them, there's Generation X, young adults wearing $300 shirts, because for them, it's just necessary to be a respected member of their social circle. I don't judge whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Of course.
I have my opinion, but we just have to accept the market as it is. And I think also for this young generation, it would be way better, financially wise, would be way better spending if they just rent whatever they want for the special occasion, then try to buy it even though they can't afford it. Like, they get the money, but they shouldn't be buying it.
Yes. I was thinking about, you could also position yourself as the place to go for a certain occasion. You can say, okay, for example, you can search for occasions where you need those luxurious things.
Yes.
And you don't do it very often. And I have, of course, wedding. Wedding is a huge industry. You can be the place to go if you want wedding dresses, wedding clothes, and wedding like watches and all those other things, necklaces and stuff. And also I don't know how it's in Germany anymore, but in Bulgaria, the celebration of high school, it's almost as like a wedding. People are dressing up really like in wedding. They rent old-time cars and they probably have really nice watches. How often do you do that? If you invest so much money for one occasion, it's just waste of money.
Yeah, we were actually also surprised in our market research. That's of course the simplest way of getting in touch with your potential customers, but we were interviewing potential customers just in the street and asking them what would be an occasion where you actually would consider renting something to get your outfit on point or to get that specific extra, and how much would you be willing to spend. We were just surprised that there were, across all age groups, individuals who would actually spend up to a month's salary just for one single occasion to make it perfect. This showed us the willingness to pay in that segment is indeed there.
Some other ideas could be something related to nice vacation, nice holidays, where people go to certain places and they need certain things once. Or another thing is certain equipment that you don't need on a regular basis. For example, you want to do a photo shoot and you want professional camera, maybe even underwater, and you don't need to buy that. You would use it once in a couple of years. Or something related to repair in the house, which is also already not maybe luxurious, but it's high quality equipment. My mother, for example, she has a garden and she bought tools, and it's cheaper to buy a good quality tool that doesn't break immediately. But on the other hand, you don't use it that often as a handyman, for example. So you just rent it for 1 week, do a whole reparation and give it back.
This is also why, like, we are currently talking about the luxury segment, and we have so many details to discuss that it appears to be, or yes, it is a wide space, but among all the objects that we use in our daily life, the luxury segment is already a niche, a much smaller segment than the entire market. And this is also why we think there is a place for our product to work, and the product market fit is there. We just have to find it, but we are absolutely convinced it's there because luxury goods are heavily inefficiently used. Indeed, like people that possess it, they just wanted to use for a special occasion. Sometimes for them it's also an investment case, but their usage is highly inefficient. And in a world where we actually really have to reconsider our spending in terms of any resource that we have, if we think about climate change and the circular economy, reuse or a more efficient use of the objects that we already have is the first step of doing that. Like, we don't walk around town with the flag, hey, we will become the most sustainable startup that there is. There's other startups that tackle this with much more effort, but we are contributing our part to that. We really think that we can make luxury goods that we all, to a certain extent, want to have or want to use, want to possess, to make them more inclusive for anyone, more profitable for the owners because it's just laying around, and to indeed also contribute our part to make it more sustainable.
Yes, that's really good. To create a really good marketing strategy, it's important to understand the ideal target audience and ideal positioning. For example, if you target weddings, then the strategy will be totally different. I mean, at least, for example, in this case, you would go to already services that are having those kind of clients, and maybe they have newsletters, maybe they have connections, and you would pay them some money and they would send out this offer in advance, ideally like in the right timing, not just one day before the wedding when they already bought everything. And that way you wouldn't waste money to any other target audience who is not being married or being invited to a wedding. So it's all about targeting. It's all about targeting the people in the right time and the right people. Or with vacation, for example, you could place ads on those vacation comparison site, but special one that are a bit more higher end, not just finding the cheapest vacation. Or also here you could acquire this newsletter. So newsletter can work pretty well from a trusted source. So if you send cold emails, people don't trust you. They will just, first of all, it's not easy to get over the spam filter, which is possible. But then to get through the filter of the humans, it's very difficult if they don't know you.
Yes.
But if they already have trust with someone and they send your offer, then it appears much more trustworthy and will be more effective. So we have like targeting and we have trust. Those 2 points depend on the target audience you target. For example, if you target the new generation, then TikTok ads might work pretty well. If it's not very specific, then it might work pretty well because they are spending so much time there and the ads are not so overpriced. And that could work as well. So it's at this point, it's a little bit difficult to have a concrete strategy for marketing. But I think the idea how it goes, it's pretty clear, I hope. Important lesson is in marketing, first of all, not to spread yourself thin. Let's say you look at tips, advice on internet, and they say, you should do social media, you should do this, you should do other things. But that's not a good strategy because you don't do properly anything of that. So you have to find the best possible channel or strategy. And second of all, you could start building a community around your brand, like on Instagram, for example. But you will need a lot of time and effort to have enough followers on those platforms. So it's more like doing it on the side, not the main focus for startups. In the beginning, you can use influencers or services who are already dealing with the same target audience and using their trust to their followers. And that way you will not need to wait until you got all of this and became kind of an influencer. It's so difficult to get there.
Yes.
But you can get a proof of concept of your business. You can get a few clients. And then later, after 1 year, you can focus more on building your own community.
Yes, I think that really, really helped me. The idea of targeting like occasions and events. And especially in regard of our target customer in the first period of our startup. Because what you said about Generation X and TikTok and all of that, that's the mass market. We don't want to forget about that. Our vision is, of course, to capture a broad market, if not the entire market. But to start, we have that issue of trust. We think about that a lot, but still, it's a major pain point in the luxury segment of potential scam and theft. And the risk, if we target special occasions like weddings and so, the target customer, the people in that segment, they are different. I assume there's less risk of theft, scam, and maybe also just damage of the objects used in such a setting. If that's like a family occasion or if it's a party, that's entirely different if I rent my watch to a person that goes to a wedding, that a person that wants to have the watch to go for their weekend trip to Las Vegas, right? So different things will happen. In the beginning, we have to especially consider that, because we cannot provide that entire secure infrastructure that we want to have soon. This is a very good tip that I will take from this conversation.
Awesome. That was my goal, to have some valuable advice that can bring you to the one step further. It's of course not possible to cover everything in detail in one setting, and that's how we usually work. We go okay, now you have some inspiration, homework, or some certain things to do, and then in a couple of weeks or months we usually meet again and then see what did you discover, especially if you went live, if your business is running. Then after a couple of months or weeks, it depends on the budget, you see how the target audience is reacting, and from there on there is the next step to bring with all this knowledge to get to the next step. So one small thing I had on my mind was with wedding. The good thing with wedding is that they don't happen so often. If you want to compete against car rental, for example, people got used to their car rental, and it's really difficult to convince them to switch to a newcomer kind of. But with wedding, everyone is equal in front of the eyes, because they are doing it for the first time. And even when an established company doesn't have so much trust yet, so you can sweep in and offer your products for much cheaper prices, and people will be really appealed to that. And also with clear target audience on your mind, it's so much easier to choose the right channels, to choose the right influencers, and to choose the right message. You can talk with the target audience, with people who are planning for wedding. For example, you can maybe cooperate with some printing companies who are sending invitations, something like that. And also on internet, maybe you can see what are they asking about, those people who are related to wedding. After a short period of time, you will really understand your target audience. What are their needs, wants, and especially concerns?
Yes.
Awesome. I am glad I could help you get some inspiration. Maybe we can do another session in a few months when you launched and when you have some experience, first steps, and then we can work on concrete marketing strategies.
Absolutely. Happy to do that. Thank you so much for your experience and your recommendations. Definitely take them into account and try to take that or to translate that into a marketing strategy for us. And happy to talk again in a couple of months, hopefully with more information regarding first customers, other fails, and maybe also some wins, hopefully. And just maybe to the audience, if there's anyone with a thought on their mind after our conversation, our currency is feedback. And if there's anything, we are always available, capturing or trying to take into account any thought, recommendation, critic that maybe helps us to build a better product.
Yes, that would be awesome if anyone could send some comments. We will also link to your LinkedIn profile in the description below. It will be exciting to see which direction this business goes. It's in a very exciting phase. No one can predict 100% how it will go. And sometimes you are surprised how different the business plan is in the beginning, and after half a year or something, it can be a total different business.
Absolutely.
It's all about pivoting, adjusting, and learning.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.